The Persephone Foundation. Timeline Archives. Timeline designation Sigma Nu-017. Bonapartes and Bolsheviks. General Lee manages to defeat the Union at Gettysburg. This doesn't net the Confederacy foreign recognition, but it does make the war longer and bloodier. The war gets bad enough that the Confederates resort to freeing some slaves to fight for its independence, the antebellum economy being in total shreds anyway. Fortunately, the Union was just as tired of fighting, and the North acknowledges the CSA's independence. The socio-economic realities of slavery's inefficiency get the Confederates to abolish the peculiar institution, although not without significant protest. The North's greater industrial capacity turns the CSA into the Union's economic colony. Butterflies flap. The Franco-Prussian War doesn't go as well for the Prussians, and they don't get Alsace-Lorraine, but they still manage to unite Germany. The Great War of 1910, caused by some damn thing in the Balkans, pits Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and Italy against Russia, France, and the United Kingdom. The Quadruple Alliance triumphs, with the United Kingdom managing to get out of the war with a white peace, while France is humiliated in the Treaty of Munich, and Russia falls to the Bolsheviks and becomes the Union of Eurasian Soviet Republics. The Ottoman Empire, while it is in the winner's circle, succumbs to communist and nationalist revolts. Round 2, known as the Second Great War, sees Italy fall to fascism and France adopt Bonapartism, a fusion of Italian fascism with the desire to avenge France's loss and recreate Napoleon's continental system. Forging an alliance of convenience with the Eurasians, the Italians, and the Japanese, the Pact of Iron wages war against the Germans and their allies. The United Kingdom and the two Americas are content to let these empires fight one another, although the UK does join in on the German side after the Japanese attack India. The Pactists emerge victorious, and much of the UK's colonial empire is carved up by the victors. The post-war world is divided between the American-led Concord of Free States, the Eurasian-led Workers' International, and the French-led Fascist Bloc. The Concord is the richest of the three, and the Japanese left the Fascist Bloc to join them in the 1960s. The United States views itself as the defender of liberty, and in this timeline, it actually does a better job of it. The Confederates have abandoned much of their racism, both due to old ideas dying with older generations and outside pressure. Brazil is actually more equal, income-wise, than your own. The British, on the other hand, are very bitter, having lost much of their colonial empire due to communist revolt, Japanese invasion, or American pressure, and consequently are looking for an excuse to leave the Concord. The Japanese left the fascists after a series of natural disasters left them in need of American cash, and while they still consider the Emperor divine and are armed to the teeth, they have mellowed out. The Workers' International is the most populous of the three. The Eurasians, with all of the economic and technological disadvantages of your own Soviet Union, are having a hard time maintaining control over its communist brethren. The Red Chinese have quite a few beefs with Eurasian industrial communism, and the Indians are just as likely to quote religious texts as they are the works of Marx. Some even worship Marx as an avatar of Vishnu. Then there's the Fascist Bloc, the most militarized of the three. The Bonapartists are paranoid, worship Napoleon as an aspect of the Supreme Being, and are keeping their allies on very short leashes after the Japanese left. They dislike nuclear weapons, having been created by Jewish science, and while they are looking into orbital bombardment to solve this, their efforts have only led to rockets crashing into the Mediterranean. Paris recently had to purge the Grenadiers, the Bonapartist Party's paramilitary unit, because they attempted to sacrifice too many people to the Supreme Being. The Italians are looking for a way out, but they realize that leaving would give Paris an excuse to invade. Then there's the Republic of China, a hyper-militarized garrison state which makes grandiose claims to all of China. Incidentally, the Chinese used to be supported by the Concord, but left when the Japanese joined. Ironically, Paris's ruling classes have increasingly been infiltrated by a cabal of crypto-Jews and closeted gays, eager for vengeance against their oppressors. Points of interest. Heavily militarized after the American Civil War out of fear of American invasion. Very useful against the Germans and French during the World Wars. A cheap, peaceful vacation destination for Americans and Confederates alike. Bolivia wants its Pacific coast back, and the Bonapartists promise support when the war comes. The Argentine communist leaders stayed home for the revolution. Protestant and Catholic violence is still a major problem. The Americans regularly step in to prevent things from spiraling out of control. Spain's ordered Catholicism is rather hostile to the cult of the Supreme Being. The Bavarian Church, on the other hand, has canonized Napoleon as a saint. The Vatican is not amused. Worship of the military? A totalitarian society that Orwell would think is excessive? And 200,000 French troops? You can find it all in the Polish national state. A communist monarchy. The King of Hungary was a Eurasian sympathizer, and Moscow let him run things. The Sahara is a great place to hide mass graves. The Italians have been very good stewards of the Suez. They know better than to threaten denying access to anyone. The Vatican has gained a lot of sites in the Holy Land. Jews and Muslims are not amused. Don't want any part of the nonsense the world has gotten itself into. The Shah ended up hanging from meat hooks during the revolution. Experimenting with a Buddhist-communist fusion. Getting to some strange beliefs about suffering and nirvana. Really ungrateful for the aid in throwing out the Japanese. Gained its independence after the Japanese broke off from Paris. Still sending guerrillas over to the French-controlled South. Placed under Brazilian administration when the Portuguese ran off to Brazil during the Second Great War. This has been a Persephone Foundation timeline reading. Thank you for listening.